Now, Guernsey offshore banking is a bit of a misunderstood topic. While there are over 25 banks operating on this tiny island, they cater to specific clients with very unique banking requirements. In this video, we'll explore the specific client types that are best positioned to benefit from Guernsey offshore banking. We'll also share the specific benefits and advantages that clients can look forward to. And we'll discuss how to get started with Guernsey offshore banking, even if you're starting from scratch and have never banked in the Channel Islands before. But before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get alerted every time we post new non-resident banking opportunities. Now, to help you fully understand the intricacies of offshore banking in Guernsey, we have a free non-resident banking starter guide. It's designed to help non-resident and foreigners understand the intricacies of offshore banking in places like Guernsey. So, don't forget to download your copy using the link in the description below. Now, here's a little Guernsey Offshore Banking 101. Guernsey offshore banking is often misunderstood. That's because most people simply label Guernsey as a tax haven, assume it has limited banking options, and leave it at that. However, Guernsey offshore banking is far more sophisticated than what you'd expect in the typical offshore financial center. And unlike many offshore hubs that are dying off as significant portions of the offshore world move back onshore, Guernsey is becoming more relevant and increasingly important. But more on that in a bit. Here's a quick overview of what you need to know in order to determine if Guernsey offshore banking is right for you or not. The Bailiwick of Guernsey is a collection of small islands sitting off the coast of Normandy, France. Just like Jersey, Guernsey is also a British Crown dependency, and together they are known as the Channel Islands. The Bailiwick of Guernsey includes 3 separate states or subjurisdictions, which are Guernsey, Alderney, and Sark. Each of these states are their own islands, have their own corporate registry, except for Sark, are fiscally autonomous, and make their own laws related to taxation and a variety of other civil matters. In this video, we'll be discussing Guernsey only, as Alderney and Sark will be covered in other videos. Now, similar to Jersey, Guernsey also has strong ties to the UK and the City of London. As a Crown dependency, the UK is responsible for defence and foreign affairs. Additionally, local legislation still technically requires approval from the UK Privy Council. Next, let's look at Guernsey offshore industry. Like many offshore jurisdictions, Guernsey offshore banking has evolved since the mid-1900s. That's when the banking sector began to expand. London merchant banks established a presence from the 1960s, and the groundwork for Guernsey's offshore financial industry was formed. But the evolution of Guernsey's offshore banking industry was, and still is, heavily dependent on specialized financial and wealth management industries. In particular, this includes the formation and administration of trusts, administration of various investment vehicles, and captive insurance entities. Not surprisingly, Guernsey has become a popular jurisdiction for institutional investors and financial service professionals. Likewise, Guernsey offshore banking has become a favorite destination to service the banking needs of such entities. So what does Guernsey offshore look like today? Today, Guernsey banks have over £100 billion in deposits, making it a significant offshore financial center. Though, unlike other financial centers, Guernsey is whitelisted by the OECD and doesn't find itself on any blacklists or watch lists. Guernsey is also considered a tax haven. In fact, like other offshore financial centers, it has no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax, no wealth tax, no corporate tax, except for the banks at 10%, and favorable income tax rules. Plus, Guernsey has other benefits as well. Guernsey is becoming increasingly relevant to certain client groups, in particular those active in fund management, estate planning, international asset management, private equity, and more. For example, in 2018, over 30% of the European junk bond issuance moved to Guernsey Stock Exchange. That represented over $25 billion US in just 1 year. 2 years prior, that number was basically zero. This is all in part to new EU regulations forcing transparency on bond issues, which, thanks to its independence, doesn't apply to Guernsey. Likewise, while the EU and the UK continue to wrestle through their marital issues, Guernsey is an independent state from all involved parties. And this makes Guernsey, along with Jersey and the Isle of Man, an ideal hub for individuals and businesses that have financial commitments in both the EU and the UK, especially if SEPA transfers are a priority. Finally, Guernsey is an important launching pad for companies planning to list on the London Stock Exchange. In fact, there are more Guernsey-registered companies listed on the LSE than any other country in the world, minus the UK, of course. But what if you don't have any plans to list on the LSE or issue European junk bonds? Well, Guernsey Offshore Banking might still work for you. So, who should consider Guernsey Offshore Banking? Well, now that you're up to speed on Guernsey Offshore Banking and its status as an offshore hub, let's discuss who should consider banking here. Let's take a look at some of the client types for Guernsey Offshore Banking. Guernsey Offshore Banking caters to the same clients that the island's offshore industry is designed to serve, such as institutional investors, Guernsey trusts, Guernsey foundations, investment funds, family offices, independent asset managers, captive insurance vehicles, Guernsey companies, and high net worth individuals. With this in mind, it should be no surprise that those interested in Guernsey Offshore Banking are typically focused on private banking, wealth management, financing, and investment management. For this reason, if you're looking for personal banking or day-to-day business banking, your options in Guernsey will be limited, though there are some options if you choose carefully. Alternatively, you may want to consider banking in the Isle of Man or Jersey instead. Both islands offer similar benefits to Guernsey, but are better suited to the offshore banking requirements of non-resident individuals. Next, let's look at Guernsey's offshore banking services. Guernsey Offshore Banking is highly targeted to the needs of wealthy individuals, institutional investors, and wealth management entities. With this in mind, the types of services you should be seeking in Guernsey include private banking, wealth management, custody, and other related services. First, let's look at private banking in Guernsey. Today, private banking is a loaded term that can cover a range of services, many of which vary widely from bank to bank and country to country. Generally speaking, in the context of Guernsey, we're referring to traditional private banking services provided to high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals and their related wealth planning vehicles. Such services include a range of banking services, lending, and more. Of course, this also includes being able to access wealth management as well as investment products and services, which I'll discuss in just a moment. Trust and fiduciary services in Guernsey. Guernsey is best known for trusts, and this little island is widely considered a leading and reputable jurisdiction for the structuring and administration of trusts. In fact, Guernsey is one of the first countries to regulate fiduciary trust services. And while modern trust laws were adopted in the 1960s and 70s, Guernsey trusts date back hundreds of years. Today, it's reported that there are over 20,000 trusts in Guernsey, though no registry actually exists. Not surprisingly, many of the international banks that operate in the Guernsey offshore banking sector specialize in the administration of such trusts. This allows clients to unlock the benefits of estate and succession planning, asset protection, tax neutrality, and much more. Next are custodian services in Guernsey. Finally, custodian services are available from many banks in Guernsey. However, these services are almost exclusively tailored to the needs of institutional, financial, and corporate clients. Such services include the settlements of accounts, reporting requirements, dividend services, and more. Next, non-resident and expat banking in Guernsey. In some instances, it's possible to access certain non-resident and expat banking services. These services range from international bank accounts to international mortgages to acquire properties in the UK. However, bank selection is critical as very few options exist. So, make sure to scrutinize the services your chosen banks offer along with the related fees before opening an account. Next, let's look at some of the challenges of Guernsey offshore banking. Like all offshore financial centers, banks in Guernsey each have their own client preferences, areas of specialization, and different requirements for account opening. In Guernsey, this includes an emphasis on deposit requirements. In fact, even though there are a few brand name international banks active on the island, your chances of opening accounts without knowing which banks cater to your client profile, your investment needs, and actually want you as a client are extremely low. For instance, banks specializing in private banking and wealth management want to know where you fall in their wealth brackets. They also want to understand which specific services you intend to use. In other words, how profitable will you be as a client for the relationship manager and the bank? Of course, banks in Guernsey have other non-financial considerations as well. Certain banks only accept clients from a small number of countries. Other banks may require specific ties to certain regions or jurisdictions. Here's an overview of the challenges applicants face when looking to access Guernsey offshore banking. Finding banks that accept their client profile. Finding banks that offer the required services. Having sufficient ties to required jurisdictions. And high deposit and investment requirements for certain banks and client types. Unlocking the benefits of Guernsey offshore banking doesn't have to be difficult. As long as you have the right information, account opening strategies, approach the right banks, and have the right banking contacts. Of course, there are other banking jurisdictions offering similar benefits that could be significantly easier and more beneficial for you to access as well. So, are you ready to unlock Guernsey offshore banking? Now, whether you want to unlock Guernsey offshore banking or explore other banking options available to you, we can help. With GlobalBanks Insider, you'll get instant access to our entire archive of banking intelligence reports, access to the GlobalBanks database, home to more than 250 banks from 50 plus countries, including detailed bank profiles, client preferences, and a whole lot more. Finally, you'll also get real-time analyst support from our team of experts, ready to answer your most pressing banking questions and to make suggestions on offshore banking in Guernsey and elsewhere to best meet your objectives. To get started, just click the link in the description below to learn more about GlobalBanks Insider. And before signing off, don't forget to hit subscribe so you get alerted every time we share new banking opportunities. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.